Hey everyone, my name's Jason. I'm a solo game developer living in Sweden, working on my own game in the Godot engine, the savior of evil from evil. Godot, the Godot engine. And yeah, I don't know how this is gonna go. We'll see. It's just a journey. We'll see how it goes. And I'm happy to have you along for the ride. Today, I want to talk a little bit about my dialogue and localization system in my game. It was one of the first major systems that I got started working on, and I've gotten into a pretty decent spot right now. It also has a plugin with it as well. And so I want to show you sort of like what it can do, how the game is looking right now, and then talk a little bit more about like how this whole system works, because it seems like, well, it's just text, just put it on the screen, right? It's a big deal, right? But it's actually a little bit more complicated than that to try and get all the different things working nicely together. And then also I made a plugin for it to make things even easier as well. So I want to show you that too. Also, a bit of an announcement. This video is the first sponsored video of the channel. So congratulations, woo, how exciting. And it's gonna be with Brilliant, but we'll talk a little bit more about them later on in the video. Just wanted to let you know, I didn't wanna, jump scare you, you know what I mean? Just a bit of a heads up, always appreciated, right? The first thing that I wanna talk about are the goals of the dialogue and localization system. So the first thing that I needed is some kind of fairly featured, it doesn't need to be fully featured, we don't need everything, but I need some pretty decent, robust system to display dialogue on the screen so that I can, make the game and sort of iterate on the game and see how it goes. Because I need a system to show dialogue so that I can start creating certain interactions, start creating certain cutscenes, for example, to see how does the game actually play out and how do I sort of build it. This dialogue is going to be one of the core building blocks of the game. And localization is actually a system which is one of the most important accessibility features of any game. And it is actually a pretty tricky system to add in later. And many game developers leave localization until the end to do it, and then find that nothing is compatible with it, and then it's very hard. So I know this going in, so I wanted to make sure that whatever dialogue system I come up with is immediately compatible with the localization system. And I designed my dialogue system with localization in mind. If I didn't have it in mind, maybe the system could be, less complex. But I think I got it to a point where it's actually quite easy to work with, and it supports localization. So that is, an important goal as well. Another goal of the dialogue is that I want there to be the potential for expressive dialogue. Now, what do I mean by expressive dialogue? If you take a game like Golf Story, for example, that's the main inspiration for me personally, is that they would have text on the screen. It's just text, but like some text would be bold, some would be italic, some would be large font size, some would be small font size, some would animate in really quickly or really slowly. And it's interesting because all it is it's just text, right? But with these added extra layers to it, it adds extra dimensions to the overall feel. You can really tell when someone's trying to slide in a snide remark, or if someone is yelling, for example, it becomes really, really obvious. And that's just done with some font changes, right? So I really want that extra dimension as well. That's an important goal too. And another goal is supporting key accessibility features like multiple, a variety of font sizes as well, because some people need bigger font sizes to read. And if reading is going to be important, I need to make sure that they can read, okay? I also want all dialogue functionality to support keyboard and mouse as well as controller. It would be sick if my game went on consoles one day, we'll see. And then the last accessibility feature is that I want there to be a dialogue history, okay? Because if you're anything like me, sometimes you read 4 or 5 panels of dialogue and you forget what's even going on. You don't know where you are anymore. You've just you're just here now and you don't know what's going on. And games with a dialogue history have been an absolute godsend for me. So you can basically go back, see what was said. That's basically it. I think that's a really important feature, and I see that as an accessibility feature. Last thing that I want to be able to do is I want it to be really easy, safe, foolproof to add new dialogue, organize dialogue, edit dialogue, reorder dialogue, and then also needs to be really easy to trigger dialogue as well. So I want all of that to be really, really easy. So I'm basically front loading the work by making a system that will work. And then later, when I try to use it, it's just gonna be really simple in code. It's really easy to find what I need to find and also edit what I need to edit. So those are the goals. And with that in mind, let's get into the demonstration. Let's see, what is the game looking like right now? First of all, it's my art, so it's not that great yet, but we're learning, okay? We're learning. I've been doing a lot of art on streams. We're getting there. So here's the little game where this is me, I guess. This was drawn by Frutchy. Thanks to Frutchy, who drew a little pixel art of me. We're using this as a placeholder. And we're in this little convenience store here, and we have dialogue. We can go to the counter and talk to this person. And Frank here, who is the clerk here, You know, obviously the portrait doesn't match. It says, hello, what would you like to buy? And we can see that we have text, we have Frank's name, okay? And we have Frank's portrait here. And then Bob here, who is us now, this is a different portrait, says, what should I buy? We have multiple choice here. I can use the mouse to highlight and select. I can use up and down or W and S on the keyboard. I can use a controller to select. So we can choose soda or chips. Let's go with soda. A soda, and soda is bold here. We can see that. That will be 1 coin, please. You hand over the cash. And so here we can see this is more like a system message, right? Like a narration kind of thing. There's no character name, no portrait or anything like that. So we have support for portraits or no portraits. All right, depending if it's a system message or maybe it's just an NPC that doesn't really, they're not a main character or anything like that. So they don't have a name or a portrait, right? So we can support that as well. And then Bob says, a refreshing drink. And that's it. So we have dialogue, pretty good. We also have like a bit of expressiveness in there, right? So it was bold. We can also see that if we choose chips, we get a different outcome. Some chips, that will be 2 coin, by the way, not coins, my bad, please. You hand over the cash, a tasty snack, I can't stop eating these. So we get a different outcome when we choose a different option with multiple choice. So that's important as well. There's also some chips here that we can talk to here or check. Wow, there are so many flavors. Again, you can see the bold here. And then we have plain potato. These are the flavors. Plain potato, salt, potato and salt. We can scroll down, by the way. Salty potato, S&P, salt and potato. We can see different font size here too. So there's a lot of things going on here. We can see different font size. We can see that we have this scroll bar here that I can control with keyboard or with a mouse. This is for text that overflows. Now, the point of this overflow thing here is that, generally speaking, in the game, none of the dialogue will overflow, okay, if you're at the default font size. But this accounts for future support of font size. So if the font is too big, it will overflow, and then there'll be this system here where you can just scroll down. It's obvious. We'll make it maybe even more obvious that there's a scroll bar. And if you're spamming E or something, or accept to progress through the dialogue, it will automatically zoom down to the bottom, and then you can press E to progress beyond that, okay? The other thing is, again, so we have these different font things here. We had smaller texts before as well. And so this is making use of Godot's rich text label, which has BB code support. And BB code is just these tags that you can do to make things bold or italic. You can use font size. And it also enables you to, Godot has the option to create like really complex effects using BB code as well, custom ones that you can make yourself. And so I think that the possibilities are actually fairly endless here with how expressive I want the text to be. So far, I think it goes a long way just having little things like font size and bold, but the fact that I can make custom effects if I want to later with like flashing colors, if that's ever a thing, that's really cool too. So the potential is there, but this is basically all I've got so far. There's also, I don't know if you noticed back here, we've got some drinks here, but there's a little, what is that? Oh my God, it's an Amogus. We can check it out. An Amogus. I wonder if I can buy it. Okay, so I wonder if we can buy the Amogus. So let's go talk to Frank again here. Hello, what would you like to buy? Actually, we have another option here. Actually, I want to buy the Amogus. What happens if we do that? The Amogus is not for sale. Okay, Frank is quite partial to their Amogus here. And we can see here, Frank is actually angry now. So we have a different portrait. We have support for different emotes for different characters too. That's pretty cool. And if we talk to Frank behind here, excuse me, employees only, angry again, angry Frank. If you need anything, go to the front counter. Another thing is the dialogue history. So we've seen a bunch of dialogue so far. Let's check it out. Here it is. So here we can see the dialogue. I might strip out font stuff, I'm not sure. But here's the dialogue history, everything that's happened. I do some checks as well to make sure that we're not really duplicating things too much or anything like that. So we have the dialogue history. This can be opened mid-dialogue or after dialogue. So that's pretty cool. The other thing is we have support for multiple languages. And in fact, we can start here with the dialogue history. If I press 9 on my keyboard, we'll switch to Japanese. Now, this Japanese is probably really bad. It's my impromptu translations, but you can see that everything is translated. Their names are translated. The text itself is translated. Everything is kind of translated. Pretty cool. And I can switch back and forth. We can close that and talk to Frank again. We can see that it's all in Japanese now. And we have my multiple choice options are in Japanese too. We'll take the fries. Oh, the chips. Well, that's fries. Kane o watasu. I think it gets pretty bad in Japanese. I want the Amogus. This is not for sale. Okay, so we have Japanese support too. Pretty cool. And the last thing that I'll just demonstrate really quickly is just that I have a plugin that I made. This was an incredibly good learning experience. There are other plugins out there that are already made that are fairly fully featured that maybe I could have used or at least hooked into. But it was really fun learning how to make this plugin. Now, the reason why I made this plugin and I didn't opt for something else is one, I wanted something that worked precisely with my system, especially with my localization and all that kind of stuff. And so this does. Maybe others would as well, but this definitely does. The other reason I wanted to do this was because I wanted to get familiar with Godot's plugin system in case in the future, plugins are a good solution for certain problems that I come across in the future as well, right? And for the dialogue, it is a really good solution. So I want to be able to think in Godot plugins moving forward too, if that makes any sense. So it was great. It was a great exercise in getting familiar with this, and I ended up with something that works fairly well. And so what we can do here, I can create like folders, blah, blah. So this is a folder. It creates a new folder, blah, blah here. You can see down here in the file system, it's there as well. So yeah, this creates folders in the dialog system area, part of the file system. I can create new containers in here, new container 1. And now I have a new container here. I can create new strings in here. Create another one. DDD, this is from Frank, and they're angry. Okay, and so these are automatically populated from my code. These are automatically populated as well. So as I create new characters and add new emotes, this will just appear here. There's an option to add something to history or not, and also we can do multiple choice as well and turn that on and off. Yeah, it works really, really nice. So the next thing you'll notice is that we have these weird containers. Why are there strings in containers? And this is mostly just for organization purposes. Basically, I'm just trying to group things, group dialogue by relevancy. So right now, we have a location which is the shop, and I put all the shop related dialogue in here so that, I can, if I ever need to edit some dialogue or add some dialogue, I know where to do it. It also makes it easier in code later when I want to trigger certain strings or show certain dialogue. I only have to look through just the dialogue that's here in this location to find what I want to show instead of all of the dialogue that I want to show. You might be wondering, well, what does the UI system look like? How did you sort of create that dialogue box? And it's quite simple, I guess. So this is a dialogue message here. And so I have a node at the bottom here. Maybe this node doesn't need to be that, I'm not sure. But we have this, the first thing is this message container, which is a 9-patch rectangle. And this is a really interesting thing because you might have noticed that we had this corner here, pixel art corner here, you see that? And then it's like a flat part, you can see on the name here. You got the corners and then it's flat and then the corners. So, what happens if, for example, if Frank's name was, Long Frank? Well, it stretches, right? So I don't just have it, it dynamically resizes. And that's thanks to the 9-patch rectangle node. So what this basically does is it allows you to define regions. So for example, I'm defining that this is a corner region, this is a corner region, and that these regions in between are middle regions that can be stretched or tiled. I'm not sure what they do. I think you can choose whether or not they should be stretched or tiled in between dynamically. So right now I've made this image quite large. It could actually be much thinner since I'm just stretching or tiling. There's no design pattern, but if you wanted there to be more of a design pattern or something that tiled, then you could set it to whatever you want it to be. And so that's how that works. And yeah, basically we just have a texture here for the face that can get hidden or not if there's no face, or if there is a face, there's text here that we can change. I have a vertical box container here, which basically you just populate with, for multiple choice options, different options. And I have a resource for multiple choice dialog option. And so for example, it's just a button here. It's just a button, right? With some text on it. So if I were to load that, what that looks like is if I put these in, you can see that the options appear. And that's kind of what that looks like. And if it's not multiple choice, we remove all the buttons. And that just becomes like a normal dialogue now, right? So that's just kind of how the UI looks. The dialogue history is just a container here, a vertical box container that has a scroll bar on it. There's a scroll container. And then we just put a bunch of these dialogue history entries, which are very similar to the dialogue box from before. And we just populate them into the history here, and they just appear as the dialogue history, as you saw before. So that's the front end, pretty straightforward. Now let's move on to how we actually trigger the text. And I wanted to make sure that this process was really, really easy. I don't want to have to write a whole bunch of code every time I want to show one dialogue. I don't really want to do that. I want it to be as easy as possible, as foolproof as possible. I don't want to have to worry about too much, right? And so basically what I came up with is this system here, which has a bunch of helper functions. So for example, if I want to get a particular container, this is just my interact functions class. These are just various interactables that are out in the world. So if I want a specific container, I can just call this function get dialog container. I can choose the folder and the dialog container name, and that loads it into here. And then I just push dialog. I just pass this container in, and then I just push in what index, right? So we saw the index before. These are indices here. So if I want to push hello, what would I like to buy? I just load in shop at the beginning, location/shop, and then I pass in number 1, and that would just show this. Now, the cool thing about having all of this in code and to write it, some things can have, like, there might be some tools out there where you can, if you have cutscenes or whatever, you can just drag and drop dialog boxes and those will trigger things. Those are not really much more user-friendly than just writing actual code, in my opinion anyway, since it's pretty quick to compile. And as a programmer, I'm very comfortable writing this kind of stuff. And I also have all of the code at my disposal as well when I do it this way. So I can have my if and else statement here. So for example, this is the part where I check to see if I found the Amogus or not. And if I did find the Amogus, we push one multiple choice option, the one that has the Amogus option to buy it. And if we didn't, then we push the other multiple choice option. And I can see here number 2 and number 3, if we check those out, number 2, what should I buy? Soda, chips, Amogus. Or if I check number 3, this doesn't have the Amogus option, right? So that's how I'm just differentiating between each. I could also comment my code here to make it a little bit more obvious what's happening, but there are also other things in my code that make the context obvious. So for example, this is the shop location. So, you know, if I need to see what this is, I just go to that dialog container and I can see. I can see that this is the shopkeeper at the counter, right? So I can see, oh, this is the conversation with the shopkeeper, if Amogus, et cetera, et cetera. Right, so like it's really nice having all of this kind of stuff in code and the freedom to just write the code as I go. All right, so one thing I realize here is that not everyone watching are programmers or game developers, but some are, and I try to do what I can to make everything as accessible as possible. I realized that, you know, just by throwing you right into the code here, throwing you in the deep end, hitting you with the cold water here, that this might be a bit much for some people, but hopefully it's not too much. And I do this because I hope to inspire you to learn the thing that you've been meaning to learn. Maybe it's to get into game development. Maybe it's to pick up programming, for example. The cool thing is there are a lot of really, really good, great free resources out there to learn programming. And I'm fortunate enough to be partnered with Brilliant for today's video, the channel's first ever sponsor. They're an amazing online learning platform and they could help you get started. Brilliant is a great way to interactively learn complex technical topics like math, programming, and computer science. All of these are necessary areas for programming video games, by the way. Brilliant is fun, interactive, and intuitive in its approach with thousands of lessons covering a range of topics, basic to advanced, with new lessons every month. If you're a beginner with programming, I'd recommend getting started with Brilliant's Programming with Python course. Actually, Python is the first language that I learned at university when studying video games, oddly enough. This course will help demystify how programming works and teach you about programming fundamentals like variables, loops, how to read and diagnose error messages, very important, and how different data types interact with each other, which can be different for every language, by the way. And in fact, there were actually even a few nifty basics with Python that I had completely forgotten about that I picked up when I was running through some of these courses myself, so there's probably something here for everyone. Brilliant also provides you with some fun challenges to help put what you learn into practice and cement your knowledge. And thanks to Brilliant, you folks can get 30 days free, and the first 200 people to sign up will get 20% off their annual premium plan if you visit my link, brilliant.org/jsfarley. Thanks, Brilliant, for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to the code. Okay, so we've got these really simple functions here, and these functions are just basically, you know, they run other code. They're placeholders for other code, essentially. And we push dialog, whatever that means, and that just displays the dialog. And we also have some other functions here to push multiple choice dialog, which does what you think it would do, pushes multiple choice dialog. Now, the nature of multiple choice dialog is that it will branch. If you pick one thing, you get one outcome. If you pick another thing, you get another outcome, typically, right? So we have this extra parameter here, which is, in this case, shopkeeper on selection made, which is just another function. And that's just what we call a callback function. So basically what this means is after the multiple choice dialog is shown and the player chooses something, we will call whatever we put in here. And right now I'm calling this which is this function here. So after they've selected made their selection, we'll run this function. We'll also provide the function, the user's selection, so we can make decisions from that point on. And this works for anything. I can make a new function anywhere for every single multiple choice, and it makes it really, really easy to branch off into multiple paths. So here we pass in a selection. We once again load in the dialog container from the shop, because that's what we're working with. And if they chose 0, which was the soda, we push these dialogues. If it chose 1, which were the chips, we push these dialogues. And if they chose the Amogus, we push the Amogus dialogue. And that makes it really, really easy to handle these kind of multiple selections. The next thing you might be wondering is, why is it called push? Why is it not called show dialogue, for example? And that's because the kind of system that I've opted to go for here when it comes to dialogue is sort of a fire and forget sort of thing. So you just push the dialogue into a queue. The system will check the dialogue queue, and the system basically just checks, do we have any dialogue? No dialogue? We'll keep running the game. But then it checks to see if we have dialogue, and if we do have dialogue, it kind of pauses the game, pauses certain functionalities, and then it starts running through the dialogue in succession. So it'll show the first thing at the top of the queue, and then when the player says okay and they proceed past that dialogue, it'll close that dialogue, check the queue, take the next thing from the queue, show that dialogue, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Now, the reason I opted for this kind of thing is because it makes scripting events really easy. So as we can see here, if I want to push multiple dialogue, I can just do them one after the other, right? They're very simple commands, and I can do them one after the other. Later on, and we're not going to get into this, but I have started working on a cutscene system as well, which manages things like it queues dialogue, for example, but it also queues moving characters around the screen. It can queue pausing. Eventually, it can do things like trigger sound effects and all that kind of stuff, right? And this whole queue system means that I can easily script stuff in one function or multiple if it branches, right? And then forget about it. It will just run. And so that I don't have to keep track of things, it sort of just tracks itself, if that makes any sense. That's kind of how this sort of functionality works. That's one of the reasons why I really wanted these function calls to be really simple. They're just push dialogue. You pass in the container, you pass in the index, and you're good to go. The next thing we need to look into is, well, how does the localization work? Okay, how do we fetch translations? I don't see that anywhere here. Whenever we populate a dialog box, which is here, so say a dialog box is seen that there's something in the queue, and we start filling up the dialog box with its information. There could be the character portrait, the character name, all that kind of stuff. This is where we start doing translation. So what we do is we have the container, we have the index of the dialog string, and then we start fetching the required information. For example, we try and get the character, if there is one. We get the other string information, which might have information about whether it should be added to the history or not, all that kind of stuff. But we also do this kind of stuff here, like where we get the dialog string itself. The string is a series of letters, just text, basically. So if we go in here and we dig in deep enough, we end up getting to a point where we call dialog.tr, and tr is a built-in Godot function, which basically checks for localization files and data and starts doing the substitution based on the current language setting. So this is basically where the translation takes place and buried in these helper functions. Which then begs the question, but then where do you get those files? What do those files even look like? And I can show you. So here's the Japanese file here. So this is what a translation file kind of looks like. There might be some garbage in here from broken things that I've done before, but basically we have a context. And what a context is sort of like a unique identifier to differentiate text, because it's possible, right, that you can have the same text but have two different translations. That is possible. And so what this context can be used for is to differentiate, the difference between those kinds of text by providing a context. I may be using this incorrectly here, but it works for my system. But there's a context, there's the string, the original string, and then there's a translation. And this is basically the compiled version of this, is basically what the system will look through, find matches, and then replace the text with. And this PO file here, ja.po is Japanese.po. This PO file is a standard localization file format. There are multiple specifications, and PO is one of them, but there are other kinds too. Godot supports PO. I'm opting for PO because getText, which is a series of tools that work with PO files and do other localization things, has some other features in it that I want to make use of. That's why I use PO file, right? And so what a PO file can eventually be done is it can be loaded up in some localization software, such as this one here, which is PoEdit. And you can actually find the text and you can make some edits here. And when you save it, then you get those translations gets stored in there. These can then be compiled into a compiled version of it, and the engine can read those. But Godot can also read the plain text PO files, which is pretty cool. So, okay, well, if we have our PO files and all that kind of stuff, that's all well and good, but we're missing one piece. How do we generate this? Like, if I create this text here, how do I get this text into this PO file so that it can be translated here? How do I do that? Well, Godot fortunately has a built-in feature for this. If you go to project settings, localization pot generation, POT generation. So we're using PO files. This creates a POT file, which is a PO template file that other languages can use to create PO files and start translating. So this is pot generation. And what we do is we just add files here. These can be scenes, for example, the pause menu, because you've got text in UI that needs to be translated. And it will automatically go through scenes, find text that needs to be translated, and it will automatically add it to that PO file. It's super handy. This also looks through GD script files, so your code files, but out of the box, it doesn't support C# files, unfortunately. In my case, I don't want my dialogue to be in C# files, so it doesn't really matter in my particular case. So if you want it to work with C# files, there's some things you can do to make it look through C# files. But instead, what I want it to do is I want it to look through my dialogue container resources. I want it to look through this stuff. So how do I do that? The good thing is that Godot actually allows you to override this system here and insert your own functionality for different data types. If I come over here, I can see that I have this plugin here in my add-ons folder. It says plugin.config. There's some information about my plugin, and this is it here. So you can actually, if you create this kind of, and you have to have this tool thing here so the code runs in your editor. If you create this class, you can call your class whatever, and it can extend this editor plugin. You have this other partial class inside, which is some parser, and it extends the translation parser plugin. You can now override two functions. One is this parse file function. The other one is this get recognized extension. So if you override get recognized extension and you return an array of strings, which are the extensions that you support, you can then start to find those files, including C# files, for example, when you click add here. So if I come in here, I can see that, like I can actually see C# files here. And if you don't have that overridden thing here, you won't be able to find those C# files, right? And then this other function here that I override, parse file, is the functionality that will run on every file that is in this pot generation here. So the idea here is that you add all of your resources that need localization, and it will process every single resource. However, in my particular case, I don't want to go through and add every dialogue. Every time I add a new dialogue, I have to go into the pot generator and add something. So what I've actually done is I've actually just added this PG text helper file, okay? And actually that doesn't do anything here. But what I do is that when I'm parsing files, if I find a file that is the same name as the text helper, then do some extra stuff. And if it's not that file, just handle it as it normally would. So if I find this file, which I will, because I've got it once in the thing, then I kick off a bunch of extra functionality where I get all the dialog containers, and for every dialog container, I start generating the strings, I start getting the context and all that kind of stuff, and then you populate these arrays here, and when you do that, that's what the system will then look through to create the PO file. So basically, I'm adding all of my strings, all my dialogue strings and all that kind of stuff with their contexts to the context plural array, because there's some plural functionality that I want to make use of. And I just add them there. And then it just gets added to the PO file in the end. So this here handles my dialogue containers. This here handles generic dialogues, which I don't have great support for right now, but basically this is dialogue that has wildcards in it. So if you want to substitute certain numbers or something like that into a string, I need to work on this. This here handles items. So I have these item descriptions that have information about items, like their name in plural, their counters, their description, all that kind of stuff. And then this here handles characters. So I just basically hook in, I just use that one C# script as a trigger to kick off a bunch of other functionality where I just check my file system for the files that I want. And so if I just put all my dialog containers, in this dialog folder, which is the same folder that I use here in the plugin, then it will automatically find all dialog and I don't have to manually add it myself. And the same goes for characters, and the same goes for items. I don't need to add those myself. So that's the link that ties the PO file and the dialogue system together. Yeah, and so that's basically the dialogue and localization system so far. I hope it wasn't too confusing. Please let me know if you wanted more information, less information. I'm not sure. Was it just kind of cool, just hanging out and seeing some random stuff about how some person makes games? I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. It would be much appreciated. If you have any feedback for this system or any potential issues that you might sort of foresee, hey, this might be bad, feel free to leave it in the comments below. And whether it will be an issue or not, or who knows? You never know where good feedback or good ideas can come from. So I would appreciate anything that anyone can come up with. So yeah, there are a couple things that I want to work on. I want to have better support for generic dialogue strings and wildcard substitution. I want better support for plurals. I do have support for it. It does work, but it's just not easy to work with. And that's a major issue if I'm going to be making a lot of dialogue. Okay, so I need to improve that. I would also like support for dialogue animation speed. So I could slow it down if someone is like hesitating, or, speed it up really quickly if someone is rambling super fast. I want to be able to like automatically progress dialogue again if someone is rambling, and just to convey that feeling, or make it so that dialogue can't be closed for a certain amount of time, just for maybe dramatic effect or for whatever reason. However, I think where I am right now, I'm really proud of it. I'm really happy with it. And it is more than enough that I need to enable me to push forward with the game and start designing little scenarios, interactions, and moments, and to see how that actually plays out and see what else do I need. Am I running into limitations and that kind of stuff. But however, recently I've been working a lot on the story and writing of the game offline. That has been really productive and super fun as well. But on streams, I've been working quite a bit on my art, doing some like color palette stuff, and then also working on some level design, just so I can start getting more familiar with like creating levels in Godot. And again, what issues do I run into? What gotchas? What things did I not consider before when creating my certain systems? And that has been really fun. So if you want to check that out, you can check me out live on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I do dev streams, twitch.tv/gemballs. Saturdays I do variety streams, or if you don't like Twitch or can't catch me because of the time zones, I have a VODs channel, and you can check that out up here in the cards or in the description down below, where I upload all of my streams, so you can go back and check out everything if you want and see what the process has been like, all the highs and the lows. But anyway, thank you very much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did. Consider subscribing if you want more game development, but also variety gaming stuff, and I'll catch you all next time. Take care, everyone. Have a lovely week. Bye.